And
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matala, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
welcome to episode number 194 of Something Else. Yes, I'm fully aware I played the wrong theme song because that was not the TNA intro, but that's the usual Tuesday intro. But guess what, Cindy? We're not going to go back and re-record that because, what the hell? I fucked up. We leave in the fuck ups on this show.
Nah, 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 nah. Aria, you fucked up. You fucked up. Aria, you fucked up. Nah, 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 nah.
Did I fuck up more than Jerry Jarrett? And I'll tell you why I say that in a second. It's not because he gave his son an overinflated ego, but I'll explain why in just a second. So, my name is Aria. Joining me, as always, is the hard 10 to my Asylum Alliance. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell you doing today?
I'm doing great. I found a new game to play while watching TNA.
Oh, I'm afraid to ask. What game is that?
It's a game called Brotato. It's like a Vampire Survivor style game. It's very quirky. It's less than $5 and it's very fun.
What do you do in this game that apparently was not just take a drink every time Vince Russo comes on the air and says, bro?
You shoot a bunch of shit.
Okay. That sounds like a quality use of 2 hours. More so than watching this professional wrestling program from May the 21st, 2003. This was
This is
TNA
miserable
number
mayhem,
46.
ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, May just won't come to an end. We've still got one more week of May. And actually, remember how I told you I tried watching these pay-per-views way back when and I gave up? Next week is my last week. That is the last week that I watched before giving up. Like, I guess I can't say entirely giving up because I know I've seen up until the end of June, but like at that point, I was trying to watch them all week by week and gave up next week because the idea of watching Disco Inferno in a world title match soured my stomach to no end. And we are 2 weeks away from that glorious moment in professional wrestling history.
It's gonna
Ah,
be emotional. It was probably moment number 26 in the 50 greatest moments of TNA history.
oh yeah, I have that DVD. I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm sure Jeff Jarrett versus Disco Inferno. I mean, I'm shocked it's not higher. Like I know one and two was Impact on Spike TV and Kurt Angle debuts. Actually I think that came out before Kurt Angle debut. Actually, I don't remember. It was somewhere
No,
around that time because they
no, it
talked
was
about the
after
fire at
because
Hard
Kurt was one.
Justice. Okay. I mean, like he should have been. Um, and Impact on Spike, especially at that time, really should have been, top two, top three. So it did make sense. But I mean, Jeff Jarrett was Disco Inferno. That's probably the number four moment in TNA history.
Oh yeah.
Can you? Yeah, I can't imagine what else could be number four. Because I imagine Sting debuting or Sting. We say debut, but we're going to see in a couple of weeks. Sting appears a couple times. Sting's official entry into TNA as a full-time wrestler in 2006. That's probably number three.
More than likely, yeah.
Uh, but so yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
speaking of getting higher, you talked about Jerry Jarrett. How bad did Jerry Jarrett get high this time?
well, according to This Week in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, back when Dave was writing fairly well, um, Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett had saying a disagreement makes it sound worse than it was. They disagreed on what the main event should have been on the show. Jeff Jarrett thought the Christopher Daniels handicap match should have gone on last, and Jerry thought that the Sonny Siaki Sandman match was a great dramatic match. And here's a spoiler for what we're going to talk about in like 35 minutes. What match was he watching? Because him and I were watching two very different matches.
The stuff after the match was more exciting than the match itself.
Which could have been done if you had the Christopher Daniels match in the main event, because Amazing Red was in that match. And as we've
Right,
learned, Amazing Red is never allowed to get over, typically. Like,
right.
literally, Amazing Red was X Division champion. We talked about the bullshit way he won it. Amazing Red's been tag team champion and immediately lost it. The end of this show may be the first time Amazing Red was actually put over in a way, in a sense that it was like, okay, this is showing that somebody somewhere is trying to book him positively in a strong way. And he only got it because spoiler, he wasn't supposed to be in that spot. You know who was?
Who?
I'll tell you, Six Pac, Sean Waltman.
He no
He was
showed
supposed
again,
to,
I bet.
he no showed because apparently he has a problem with Russo. Spoiler alert, we'll find that out soon enough.
Yep.
And again, this is like we'll talk about more than once on this fucking show. Russo is still booking for the internet audience. And yes, in 2003, the internet audience was bigger than it was in 1999. However, you're still not just fucking booking for the internet. Nobody fucking knows that Sean Waltman and Vince Russo hate each other. Because why would they? And and spoiler alert for like 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, that's going to be a big deal, quote unquote, when Sean Waltman makes a surprise return. It's like, oh my
Mhm.
God, we didn't think he would ever come in with Vince Russo. You don't know this because that's not part of the fucking show. You know, like they mentioned it that one time when whatchamacallit, when Russo debuted in November, that like Sean Waltman is no longer here, and they never really brought up why. We brought up why because we know the story, but we were not buying pay-per-views in 2002. TNA is not getting any money off of this podcast. Anyway, the other note in this week's Observer is that the original plan for the 1 year anniversary show on June 18th was Jeff Jarrett versus Glenn Gilberti. However, Jeff Jarrett is rethinking that because everyone on the planet understands that if this is supposed to be a big show where you're hoping to get new eyeballs or to pop a buy rate similar to the Jarrett Raven match, you're not going to fucking do that with Disco Inferno in the main event. Just
No, you're not.
tell, throwing that out there. And by the way, Russo and Jarrett continue to fight because Russo wanted to book Jarrett versus Raven on May 28th with Raven winning the title, and Jeff Jarrett noped his way out of that. Don't ask how that would then have led to Disco Inferno getting a world title match, because that is not important. Anyway, on to the show. So, okay, calling it a Star Wars-esque opening may not be entirely accurate, but I referred to the intro as a Star Wars-esque opening where they basically said that tonight we'll be starting two different tournaments. Yippee!
God, the whole thing was so fucking pretentious. Can I? I'll give you the whole thing because I wrote this down because it was so stupid.
Knock yourself out.
Since the inception of total nonstop action, TNA has been governed by the National Wrestling Alliance. Along the way, gang warfare has erupted, evolving total nonstop action into an anarchy rules environment. TNA officials have decided to step in, mandating two separate tournaments with the intent of restoring order to the asylum and returning the total nonstop action of the program to the ring. These two separate tournaments will begin tonight.
Yes. Oh, and we'll get to that. We will get to that in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to that in 10 minutes, Raven is sitting on top of a production truck saying he wants to be the world champion. Only 25 minutes to go, or 25 months to go, excuse me.
Yep.
While he was yapping away, he is suddenly yanked backwards and beaten up, and we hear the voice of Jeff Jarrett. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because we didn't actually see Jeff Jarrett beating up Raven, because Jeff Jarrett's in Australia right now for the World Wrestling All Stars. Don't they say on this show, and I didn't think about this until right now, don't they say on this show later on that he's in Australia right now?
Yeah, because this is the Australia show. This is the monthly Australia show.
Yeah. But isn't he in Australia for the WWA shows? The one that's this weekend versus Sting, where they unify the NWA and WWA titles. Either way, this is Jeff Jarrett's voice is the lone appearance of Jeff Jarrett on this show. And I guess I'm going to say that Jeff and Jerry had a disagreement that I guess he had to have been on the damn show, or he had to have been there, but I have my doubts.
They probably just had Jarrett record. They probably recorded this promo a couple days ago.
They wouldn't even have to record it. They Raven laid down and they played a track of Jeff Jarrett's voice. You know?
Did you hear the line that he said near the beginning?
What line?
Nobody jerks off in Nashville without Jeff Jarrett owning part of his fist.
Yes. Again, I'm still trying to figure out how any of this is supposed to lead to people wanting to buy these shows. But whatever. So we go to a X Division opener because again, the one way to almost guarantee a show begins on a high note is to just send the X Division out there to have a good match. And well, we got CM Punk, Jason Cross, Kid Romeo, and Paul London in a four-way elimination match. Yes, that's CM Punk, because what other CM Punk would there be? He hasn't been on the show since September when he was on that one show that did a tag team gauntlet match that he had to qualify to be in because it was like a three-team match. One of the teams was the Hot Shots, and it was like whoever loses is eliminated from the gauntlet, and the Hot Shots lost.
And I think the other team was Jimmy Rave and Derek Wild.
Sounds right. Romeo was on the show one time before now, and that was that six-way match back in July that I think Low-Key won. And Paul London is now using Kid Cash's old theme.
Yeah, I had that written down too. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. And actually, Kid Romeo had a song that sounded a lot like the theme that eventually becomes the main event Mafia theme.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite that, but it was like using, parts of that.
I thought it was like the same theme that Tony Mamaluke used, but
whatever. It's possible, but again, Tony Mamaluke hasn't been here since July either. So the match started with Punk wanting to shake Romeo's hand. Romeo flipped him off, so all three of them nailed Romeo. Romeo, by the way, the longest reigning WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Champion of all time. Punk takes a hard bump on the floor as he gets pulled off the ropes. Punk gets back in and had a fun series of spots with London before sending Paul London flying off the top rope into the guardrail outside the ring. And of course, because Punk was running wild, he was pinned first by Jason Cross with a spinning neckbreaker. We then had our requisite dive spot, which finished with Cross hitting a spectacular-looking twisting dive over the top rope. And because Cross was the one on fire, Cross then immediately got pinned with the Emerald Fusion from the middle rope. Romeo then did a version of a top rope hurricanrana. And I know we've seen something similar to this before, and it was a spot that was fucked up the first times, and I'm not 100% sure it wasn't fucked up this time. But essentially, London is on the ropes, and Kid Romeo jumps up for a hurricanrana, but he hooks London underneath the armpits instead of the head to take him over. London was bleeding for some reason, and Romeo hit him with a TKO, but picked him up from the pin attempt. London then won the match and also ended the streak of matches ending in interference with a shooting star press. And then, and this is the most important part, and the thing I've been griping about forever, we had a match, somebody won the match, and then they walked to the back. And that was it. That was all that happened. We didn't have six guys unnecessarily interfering in a random X Division four-way match because it wasn't necessary. And it's almost as if Vince Russo has half a brain. And I say that knowing that it's probably, Jeff Jarrett probably ixnayed the seven guys running in to interfere for no reason.
Yeah,
And I gave
there's
that
no
match
reason
a
to do it.
six. Hmm?
There's no reason to do it because Saban wasn't on the show.
No, he was in Australia because he's in that WWA tour too.
Right, because he was he was already WWA Cruiserweight champion.
No, he was the X Division champion. Somebody else was the Cruiserweight champion. I mean, basically, when we go through this show, everybody who's missing on this show is in Australia. Like Conan, Australia. Jarrett, Australia. Chris Sabin, Australia. Jerry Lynn, Australia. Like, that's where they all are. I'd say low key, but low key apparently got injured.
He got injured. They bring it up on the show. He got injured at a Ring of Honor show, separated his shoulder. He was out for 2 months.
Sucks to be low key. Not that we ever see him much, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, 6.0 out of 10, in case I didn't say it.
I liked it a little bit more than you did. I gave it a 7.
There you go. Okay. So, Cindy, this may end up being one of those times you need to sit back and just chill for a few minutes, or I may just be frustrated 30 seconds in and need you to pick up the ranting. So, Tanae and Wes discussed the two tournaments that are starting tonight. Now, you might recall in our Star Wars-esque opening segment, the point of these tournaments is because there is anarchy in the asylum, and that is a bad thing. And so we're trying to gain control of the asylum, and we're doing that by putting everybody in tournaments, to encourage competition and, to determine who the best man and the best team are. And one of those tournaments is the Hard 10 tournament, which we'll discuss a little bit more later on, but it's a hardcore tournament where the winner is determined by points. So it's the Dup Cup all over again. But again, we'll get to that in a few minutes. Then we have what's called the Asylum Alliance Tournament, where it's going to be an 8-team tournament. And the ace team is determined in a qualifying match later tonight between America's Most Wanted and D'Lo Brown and AJ Styles. So the two best babyface teams on the roster are, and by the way, this tournament is for a shot at the World Tag Team titles. So the two best teams on the roster that are not any combination of Triple X are going to have to face each other to qualify to be one of the 8 teams in this tournament. The other 7 teams. Now, again, to remind you, the point of this tournament is to bring the anarchy down, to make things more stable, to return civility to TNA. And so it's like, okay, we've got a lot of we've got a lot of groups, we've got a lot of gangs here. There's a lot of people in a lot of gangs. So you can easily make 7 teams out of all the stables in this company. It's not that hard. I did not sit down and figure it out, but I'm going to bet if I had, it wouldn't have been terribly difficult. Because, like we've mentioned before, SEX has like 3 tag teams in and of itself. So you could have done 2 there. The ECW guys you could split them up with 2 tag teams. So that's 4. The new church has at least 1 team, maybe 2, but we'll say 1. That's 5. Then you have D'Lo and AJ, AMW, that's 7. And then I'm sure you could find an 8th team somewhere. It is not that difficult to put together an 8-team tournament with the already established groups in this fucking promotion. Hell, you could have, not even going to say good on Julio and Alexis, so we'll see. That's not the worst idea in the world. Anyway, the other 7 teams in this tournament to determine a top contender to the World Tag Team titles. This is again, the winner of this tournament is going to take on Triple X for the World Tag Team titles. The 7 teams that are competing for a title shot are all determined by the lethal lottery. And not even the lethal lottery. They just took 14 people and randomly assigned them to each other. There was no drawing backstage or like, oh my God, by sheer dumb luck, these 2 people are now teams. Or these 2 people are now a team. It's not even that. It's TNA who just said they're trying to like end all this wackiness, end all this craziness, and they decided on their own that the best way to determine a #1 contender to their tag titles is by having 7 teams who hate each other. Doesn't that sound fucking terrific?
No, it doesn't. And this, have you ever in your life, you got paired, there's somebody in either a class that you're taking or at work with someone you absolutely despised. You're assigned a project and you had to work with this person.
But here's the thing. If I went to work and me and this other guy started beating the shit out of each other, the HR and our bosses will not decide next week, well, you know what? These 2 need to be put on a project together that if they complete the project successfully, they will both receive a promotion. That would not be the response any real human being or any real job would do.
Yeah, but doesn't that kind of make sense for what Russo is trying to do here? It's the warped thinking that we've seen in sitcoms. And he's trying to make that work in professional wrestling. And for a couple of teams, it works. One team stays teaming with each other afterwards. Everybody else just hates each other.
If on Friends, at the same time Ross and Rachel hated each other, they had 6 other groups all hating each other at the same time, it wouldn't have meant shit.
Actually would have improved the show.
It really wouldn't have. You know? If on Seinfeld, George and Elaine were hating each other, and then Kramer and Newman also hated each other, and, you had 4 other couples all arguing with each other every week, that would not make for an interesting show. That would not make for a memorable show. That would be something Vince Russo would fucking love, apparently, because I'm convinced that he has no real friends, because nobody has friends on this show. They all just hate each other. And, yeah. And the only way he would, lost my train of thought there.
It doesn't matter. This tournament is stupid.
So another example of Vince Russo not learning from his mistakes. Because remember that stupid lethal lottery tournament they did in WCW for the tag titles? Equally as fucking stupid as this is. And at this point, I only know 5 of the teams. Because here's the other spoiler. They don't give us brackets at all. They just say at the end of the show, Don West just says, hey, next week we're going to have more matches. What matches? Who like fine. You don't want to spoil like who the teams are in the lethal lottery. Tell us the six people that are, going to be that are going to be mixed and matched.
Well, they didn't
Give
because
us
one of them is currently not in the company.
oh, that makes even more sense. And we'll get to this later, but the whole point they say was, oh, it's because the factions in TNA are getting too violent and out of control, so we divvied up the factions. Okay, I can't wait to hear you explain to me how some of these people are considered part of a faction, but we'll get to that. Um, so we go from that to the SCX locker room, where Goldilocks is talking to Sonny Siaki, who tells us that main event Glenn Gilberti is not here tonight. I do not know this for a fact. My assumption is, like with everything else, if they're not here tonight, they are in Australia. But
He
I,
is in Australia.
that's more than likely because he was on a couple of those WWA shows. And Siaki says that he is in charge tonight, and he tells David Young to go get Raven. Young refused to do that, even though he was. By the way, when they went to the locker room, the Harrises were talking to each other, Daniels and Skipper were talking to each other, and David Young is sitting in the corner, which is never explained and never even brought up. So unless you were noticing where David Young was walking from, you wouldn't have known that he was sitting facing the corner. That was never mentioned, never brought up, and the fact that he was apparently being punished for some ungodly reason, that was not still inspiring enough to get out of punishment to go like, okay, I'll go find Raven. Because again, Sonny Siaki is a pussy, apparently. And he's gonna go and find Raven. Because oh yeah, they mentioned Siaki is going to be in a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match tonight with the Sandman, where Raven is the referee. Elsewhere, by the way, no one can ever find Raven on these shows but the cameraman. The cameraman has no problem at all. But elsewhere, Raven is in a well-lit room, slamming Julio into a wall for betraying him last week, and then he was about to pour bleach down Alexis's throat, and then just decided not to. Do you want to tell us about these two segments at all?
Apparently, Sonny Siaki was a bit miffed. He was in the tag tournament and he was, being protective of Desire because, of course, as we know, somehow the gormless idiots are the only ones that actually care about a woman's safety. Sonny Siaki is a prick and doesn't care.
So who cares about women's safety? Because because if you say David Young, this is the same David Young that gave his best friend, who the fuck was it? Oh my
Athena?
God, the Athena, yeah. He gave her a fucking spine buster a few weeks ago, which by the way never got brought up ever again, and I don't think we've seen Athena since.
No, she hasn't been featured since. Like I said, gormless idiot.
I don't know who the gormless idiot is because I think of David Young,
Mm-hmm.
but he don't care about women either. He just wants to team with Desire, but he's not going to be teaming with Desire. Spoiler alert. Because hey, we need to have women on in this tournament for some reason, and B, we need to have um the partners still not get along. But anyway, your other thoughts? Thoughts about
Uh,
Raven trying to kill Alexis Lurie with bleach?
just another week in TNA, I guess.
Yep, because women suck. And Vince Russo, who somehow is still married to the same woman for decades now, that woman must be a fucking saint. Like, or, and I'm sorry to have to say this, like, because you see how Russo books women, and Russo has always booked women the same way. And it's been the same. It was the same in '98. It was the same in 2003. It was the same in 2011. He books women exactly the same. They're all bitches, skanks, hoes. They all hate each other. Women don't get along, and men need to put them in their place. Either his wife is the biggest bitch on the face of the earth, or she's a fucking saint for putting up with him. And according to Jim Cornette, she was a sweetheart. So take that however you choose to take it.
I'm gonna agree with Cornette, sweetheart. Like,
So then we get a match. Now, here's the match. And I mentioned earlier Chris Daniels was in a handicap match, but I didn't actually say what the match was. Now, you listener out there, reasonable adult human being that you probably are, you know Christopher Daniels is a heel. He's part of SEX, and he's going to be here with Elix Skipper. And we've even mentioned, I mentioned earlier, Amazing Red was in this match. So you may think to yourself logically, Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper versus Amazing Red. No, that wasn't what happened. Because, that would make too much sense. Okay. What if I told you Low Key was supposed to be in this match? So you're like, oh, okay. So because we've mentioned Low Key's injured. So it's probably Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, and somebody from SEX. Maybe Mike Sanders, because you didn't bring up Mike Sanders yet, who, by the way, is probably in Australia. Um, nope, no Mike Sanders. I was like, oh, well, SEX has like 50 people in it. He might have teamed with Sonny Siaki, or he might have teamed with David Young, or he might have teamed with a Harrisy, or whatever, and thus making it a 3-on-2 handicap match. Well, it is a 3-on-2 handicap match without Low Key in it. However, because nothing in this company can make a lick of fucking sense, we had Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper in a 3-on-2 handicap match against Amazing Red, Slash, and Just Incredible. Now, let's bring up the many issues with this. First of all, why is the New Church and the Extreme Revolution teaming with each other? And if it's another one of these, oh, well, we need the factions to stop killing each other, why are they teaming with Amazing Red, who isn't in a faction? Why is Amazing Red the only babyface in this match? Because the New Church have been heels since the end of March when they turned on the Extreme Revolution, and Extreme Revolution has been heels since April when they turned on Jarrett and sided with Raven. However, both of those things you're now supposed to forget because whatever reason, they're just not heels anymore.
plus they're lower tier heels compared to Triple X. And it's fine for heels to hate other heels. They will go the enemy of
my enemy is my friend. But
yeah.
Okay, I get the point was, well, this match was originally booked as a 6-man tag with Low Key. Low Key got injured. There were 2 options or 3 options that they could have gone with. They could have put somebody else from SEX in this match. Or actually 4 options. They could have um they could have put some random person in as a random 1-week member of SEX, into this match and make it a 6-man tag. They could have taken out one of the babyface team. Like, you don't need Slash and Just Incredible. You could have taken out Just Incredible. You could have taken out Slash and just had a tag team match. Those are 3 solid options. Or you could go with option 4, which is what they did, which was a 3-on-2 handicap match where the theoretical baby faces have the 3-on-2 advantage. This is from the same booker who once wondered out loud why you can't have a disqualification in a cage match, and then was also the first person to book the baby faces having the man advantage in war games. And I say the first person because for some fucking reason, VKM and HHH have continued that on to this day, where when they do 2 war games matches, one of the matches has to have the baby faces have the advantage. Why?
No clue.
Also, you remember how Triple X won the tag team titles? Because they're the tag team champions. Do you remember what type of match they won the tag team titles in, Cindy?
Handicap match where they were disadvantaged.
Yes. So you might think, hey, the tag team titles must be on the line here, right? No.
Nope.
And Tenay and West are basically like, yeah, the tag titles are on the line here, obviously, because it's a handicap match. I'm like, What the hell happened 3 weeks ago?
Because Daniels
Anyway,
and Skipper wouldn't agree to put. They're not going to defend the tag titles in a 6-man.
yeah, because TNA would never do something that stupid.
Not yet,
Um,
anyways.
they do. I I don't know which show this was, but I know when they introduced the knockout tag titles, they did a 6-man tag on a pay-per-view with I think it was ODB, Taylor Wilde, and Hamada versus the Beautiful People for both belts. I know that happened. Which, by the way, that tells you what's wrong with my fucking brain that I remember that. Anyway, the babyfaces get the heat on Chris Daniels until Chris Daniels cleanly out wrestled his foes to take over and make the hot tag to Skipper. Elix tagged in and had all three faces working him over until Daniels helped out his partner, who was fighting valiantly against three men. The fans somehow got into this, but it wasn't until we turned it into an actual somewhat sensible tag match because they get the heat on Red, and Red is a small man who plays a good babyface in peril. And by the way, somehow Amazing Red is the one person Vince Russo has never tried turning heel. I don't know how, because that seemed like it would be right up his alley to take the smallest person in the company and turn him heel. The finish saw Daniels hit Credible with the tag title belt. Slash made the save. Shenanigans broke out, and Red pinned Skipper with the springboard STO, which was kind of neat. And the highlight of the commentary, pardon me, was Tenay freaking out because Skipper and Daniels had a 2-on-1 advantage on Red. Yeah. After the match, because again, we've mentioned this 8 billion times. Amazing Red is not allowed to get over, no matter what. The number one rule of TNA. Well, even above the number one rule of TNA, even above Jeff Jarrett must always go over. The number one rule of TNA is Amazing Red can never get over, and we saw that here as soon as he won this match cleanly, overwhelming the preposterosity of the match idea to begin with. Raven immediately ran out and dropped him with a DDT, making Red look like a total fucking geek for at least a second time this happened. Because didn't Raven do that to Red after he won the tag titles? Or no, it wasn't. They won the tag titles.
That was the
Trip.
luchador.
Well, that's how he won the X title. But the tag titles was when him and Lynn win. Daniels and Skipper attack them from behind, and then Jeff Jarrett has to come out and help them because the tag team champions could not just win the match and get over. Anyway, so Red continues to be buried, and in a way that Russo considered go, oh bro, how am I burying him, bro? He just won a match, bro. And then 30 seconds later, Russo will say, yeah, wins and losses don't matter, bro. But yeah, Raven cuts a promo on how he wants to wrestle Jeff Jarrett, how he's declaring war on Jeff Jarrett. A promo that could have happened without giving Raven a DDT. And I know your defense to this could be, well, you see, Arya, you need to do this so Red later on the show he can come out and have a grudge against Raven. It's like you come up with another fucking way. You come up with another fucking way. If this is your idea that Red is going to get laid out by Raven, then he didn't need to win the fucking match. You could have Raven come out at the finish and for whatever reason grab Red, drop him, and then Triple X just wins the match against Slash. Because, again, who cares about Slash? And then Raven cuts his promo about Jarrett. It completely goes against the point of having Red win the fucking match and make a big deal about it when he's immediately treated like a punk, a joke, and a jobber. And I'd love to know because Christopher Daniels, when you watch his shoot interview that he did in like 2013, when him and Kazarian left Impact, he's a very honest person about a lot of this shit. And I'm gonna bet they probably didn't ask him about Red's booking because why would they? But I bet he'd have a lot to say about this. And Anyway, despite, like I said, despite the preposterosity of this stupid match, it was at least a good match with a finish. But of course, as we mentioned, Red is never allowed to get over. Number one rule of TNA. 5.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 6 out of 10. It was a good match. Just never could get it for me. However, another rule of TNA about Amazing Red: Amazing Red has to make an amazing comeback.
That's barely. I wouldn't even say that's anything with TNA. I would say that is Amazing Red, Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, all being good wrestlers and knowing how to try to work around the stupidity that they fucking put in front of them.
Speaking of stupidity,
Oh my God. If you thought I've ranted so far on this show, and don't get me wrong, I've ranted and I got more ranting to come later in this show. We have what may be legitimately the dumbest fucking segment. I don't want to say in TNA history because there's a lot of fucking dumb shit we've seen in the past year, but this ranks right fucking up there. Now, for some reason, and this reason I'm going to bet gets ignored. I'm going to bet this never gets brought up again. So they show a fucking, captured video clip of Goldilocks in theory because she said she just got off work. So I'm assuming we're supposed to believe it was after last week's TNA show. Although the way she just said she got off work could mean any of her 100 jobs she probably had to do to really support herself while getting paid peanuts by TNA.
probably a
So
studio musician or something. I don't know.
she's randomly on the street and she's talking to people and there's a camera in her face. And then she leaves them and goes into a cell phone store.
A
And this is
singular
2000.
wireless store of all places.
Okay, so she may have had Singular Wireless. It's 2003. They were a name brand wireless at the time. So she goes in there and is saying that basically the new phone she just bought isn't working. And heaven knows I've been in this situation with a cell phone company that just they're dick. And the poor guy behind the thing is basically saying, "I'm sorry, but," because I don't think they said this, but my thought is she did not get the extended warranty where we replace your broken phone right after you buy it.
Yep.
And then she decided to throw a temper tantrum, threw the phone on the ground, and walked out. Now, that by itself would be stupid. And if you said, well, for some reason that really happened and TNA felt they had to acknowledge it because it was a news story or whatever, have I got news for you? I have seen middle school plays with better acting than Goldilocks. Um, I don't know. I've never met Goldilocks. Maybe she's a total sweetheart. I don't fucking know. And maybe it's difficult for her to play a total bitch. But hey, the guy behind the counter played I'm a customer service guy really fucking well. If I were, to score his interaction here, I would have given him a high marks if I was to grade him for quality.
I give him an 8.
However, yeah, yeah, I'd give him a B, or whatever. And so Goldilocks, though, most over the top bullshit, pretending to act mad that you've ever seen in your life. The most obviously staged, stupid bullshit. I compared this to TMZ, and I was like, well, this is a TMZ ripoff. Except I then looked up TMZ doesn't begin or doesn't debut until November of 2005. So this wasn't even a TMZ, ripoff.
I
And
thought it'd be
honestly,
something
if
like
this
Gawker. I thought it'd be something like Gawker, but that didn't exist in 2003.
yeah, if this was real, and here's a spoiler because I've worked in enough customer service jobs in my life, the police would have been called.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, the police were not called. And as you could tell, she is even though she's in TNA, there was no sense of, oh my God, it's a celebrity here at our cell phone store. And the guy obviously had no idea who this woman is, even though it was an obviously staged, scripted segment. They couldn't even have the guy go, "Oh my God, you're Goldilocks from TNA." Because as we've acknowledged before, the real stars are in WWE. That has been the story that they've told for the last 6 months.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, this was complete horseshit. And like, how did nobody see this and think, okay, this doesn't need to air? The show goes an hour 56 minutes. This segment was like 2 minutes. This did not have to air.
No, it didn't need to air. If I were to do like a top five worst segments in TNA over the past year, this is up there. This is a
I don't
contender.
I don't know. I think it best be honorable mention because I'm sure I could name five Miss TNA Bruce moments that were worse. Um, then there was the puppet pulling a gun on Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett making the save by hitting him with a chair. Um, and like any of the Dup Cup matches. So this would be an honorable mention, but it's still really fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm going to bet there's no follow up to this next week. Zero. And I say this as somebody who did not watch next week's show yet and did not look up any results for next week's show. I'm going to bet does not happen.
I don't think you need to
But
worry too much about it because it's getting replaced. That was a failed angle to write that stuff off. It gets written off a couple seconds after this ends. We'll just lump the next part of it now because it's immediately afterwards. So
oh,
it
and
gets
I lied about Mike Sanders being in Australia because Mike Sanders wrestles on this show.
yeah. I also looked up Blake Gilberti. He was on neither show.
So Glenn Gilberti just wasn't here this week. The number one contender to the world title, who is getting we're going to talk about him because he's in a fucking pre-taped interview. But the number one contender to the world title and the physical body of the world champion weren't on this show. But
Mm-hmm.
continue about our good friend Goldilocks.
I know I'm jumping back and forth, but the acting is worse than you say. Because she's got her phone, it's like ring, 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 hello, ring, 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 stuff like that, acting like that. And she turns into a real psycho bitch. Kind of a precursor to what she'll become around 8 months from now. When
All we
she
needed
actually
was
is a heel manager.
uh who knows? Maybe that episode of Family Guy where Meg fell in love with Brian and they put that guy in the green circle to do the translations for the deaf people and he calls Meg a psycho bitch and the guy screams, "You're acting like a psycho bitch." Maybe that was what was supposed to be entered here. And
Maybe.
they could not afford the green circle.
Nah, sadly not. So they do the next best thing. They cut to Goldie after it aired in the sex locker room, and she says, quote, "Oh, it must have been that time of the month."
Yeah, yeah. The,
And
the whole
then
thing was the whole thing was written off as a joke because she was on her period.
Sanders, without missing a beat, goes, "It's a family show, Goldie. It's a family show."
Yeah.
Dude, it hasn't been a family show since its inception. What the hell are you talking about? Although I do
Well,
admit I did laugh.
that's the joke, you know. Especially because the whole point of SEX is to turn it into sports entertainment, which is not supposed to be a family show. Uh, Even though WWF at its peak had millions millions of kids watching.
Oh yeah. So then Goldilocks tries to talk about the hard 10 tournament that he's in, after he escaped Mike Awesome. And guess what? Insert penis joke here.
Now, we don't know that Goldilocks is not in the Hard 10 tournament because we only know two people who are in it.
Yeah. Slip of the tongue. I meant
I,
Sanders.
to be fair, I know a third because I know who wins the tournament, but that's about it. And I could make a educated guess on several of the others.
Yeah.
But yeah. So this is the Hard 10 tournament. And yeah. And Mike Sanders, because we can't take anything seriously on the show, is telling Goldie that he beat Andre the Giant in 1998.
No, he
I
beat
wonder if
Andre in 98. He beat Sid and just names of people that he probably beat on a random episode of WCW Worldwide or Saturday Night.
Didn't he also mention The Undertaker? Like he was mentioning every big guy, and because he's wrestling Brian Lee, and because he made a point of saying that he beat the Undertaker, and now he's going to beat the Underfaker. Ha ha ha! The joke isn't funny. The joke isn't funny when Trey and I talk about it on Smoky Mountain, and it's certainly not funny when they say it in TNA. And I have better delivery than Mike Sanders does when I make that joke. Anyway, it's time for the Hard 10 tournament. Now, Vince Russo is obsessed with a points-based hardcore match. We saw that with the Dup Cup. Now, the one of 600 complaints about the Dup Cup was that there were too many fucking rules. There were too many scoring things. It was impossible to keep track of. So they made things relatively simple. Here's the point system. You get 1 point if you hit somebody with a strategically placed weapon. And I can't wait for that bullshit to come up where they determine a weapon is not strategically placed. Because they don't bother to mention what that means, except they show a bunch of fans holding garbage can lids. So that may be the best definition of what a strategically placed weapon is. And if you go through a table, the other person gets 5 points. They do not specify that the other person has to put you through a table. Just if you go through a table, the other guy gets 5 points. And here's my question. Is the table a weapon?
It's a super weapon. That's why it's worth 5 points.
Okay, but it's a weapon. So if I pull that table out and I pick it up and hit you in the head with it, do I get a point? Or because that's not a strategically placed weapon, even though it's a part of the match, I don't get a point for hitting you with a table?
No, because you got to put your opponent through the table.
Well, that's 5 points. But I'm just saying a weapon shot is 1 point. And I want a point by hitting you in the head with the table. And then another 5 points for putting you through it.
You get nothing and you like it.
Or just move out of the way when you come charging towards me and I'm standing near a table. Plus, does it only have to be the folding tables under the ring? Or what if someone goes through the announce table? What if somebody goes through the timekeeper table? Does that count as a table? What if they go backstage and there's the catering table and someone goes through the catering table? Does that count?
Hold it.
Yeah, I just made a big assumption.
Yeah.
I made a huge assumption there. I shouldn't have done that.
No.
Yeah.
Don't worry. This will be the quickest description of this match. So it's Mike Sanders versus Brian Lee. It was quick, inoffensive. It was only a few minutes. Mike Sanders escapes. He wins. He moves on.
So why wouldn't? Okay, let's do the bro if this is real, bro. Why was Brian Lee only hitting Mike Sanders once? Why was Mike Sanders only hitting Brian Lee once? Why wouldn't I just take 2 garbage can lids and hit you over and over in the head with them 10 times and get 10 points. Oh, and you have to win by 2 points because apparently we can't make it too simple. We have to make it like tennis. So, yeah, they hit each other one time each, and that was it. Remember when the WWE ECW started, and for weeks the only thing the Sandman did was walk out and cane people in the head 12 or 13 times? And then remember at the same time, WWE had a fantasy game where you got points for every time one of your guys hit somebody with a weapon. And so if you picked the Sandman, you'd have like 50 points a week. Um, that's what I thought of during this match. And yeah, Mike Sanders wins 10-8 because Brian Lee put himself through a table. And now that I've seen one of these matches, I do not need to see 6 more of them. Mike Sanders wins, rating 2.0 out of 10.
I said 4 out of 10. I didn't pay much attention to the match. I was just playing more potato.
Hey, remember a couple of weeks ago when nobody could find Raven? Well, apparently it's not that difficult to find him because Sonny Siaki found him here. And Siaki told him that Raven could only be with either SEX or the Extreme Revolution. I thought he wasn't with either. I thought that's been acknowledged. Apparently, it doesn't count, I guess. Siaki told him that since he's the referee, he better call things for Sonny and lightly tapped him in the face. And by the way, I was lying earlier when I said that Raven, Julio, and Alexis were in a brightly lit room. They were in a dark room. Sonny and Raven are now in the brightly lit room. Maybe Sonny found the light to the room, and that's what happened here.
And it was a very small room.
Yeah. So yeah. How many times did Sonny Siaki call himself Sonny Siaki?
I was playing Brotada, so I didn't keep track.
Wow.
So I was the winner.
You won potato?
Yeah, I won.
So you killed people?
Yeah. In a video game.
I'm aware of this. I did not think you were going around the state of Washington killing people. Although, hey, what do I know?
No, that's what the people of Idaho do.
Anyway, we suddenly are whisked away to what may have been legitimately the only funny skit on this entire show and possibly this entire show's history. And that includes everything up until 2020. Backstage, Shark Boy and New Jack are playing Candyland. This is not a euphemism. They were literally sitting there playing a board game. Somebody somewhere had the idea to have New Jack and Shark Boy play Candyland, and for one time in the history of TNA, they stumbled accidentally into something that was actually funny.
The Odd Couple effect.
And I guess when you do the same thing 50 times a week, it's going to work once. And the preposterous nature of New Jack, a man with multiple justifiable homicides by his own admission, and Shark Boy, a man who we've seen with and without mask on this show, playing Candyland, was the right level of ridiculousness for this show. And it was legitimately funny.
It's like that Chikara level of silliness without it being overbearing. And before you found out that the company is run by bastards.
And Mike Quackenbush was hundreds of miles away from this segment. Elsewhere in the back, Ron Killings is mad about teaming with Don Harris. Ron tripped over his words trying to say Conan, but couldn't. Ron and Don Harris then go to kick the Truth's ass. New Jack and Shark Boy attack Killings, because this is apparently the match. They fight to the ring, and the match starts. So we get our first match. This is the first official match in the Asylum Alliance Tournament to determine a new #1 contender to the World Tag Team Championship of the world. New Jack and Shark Boy versus Don Harris and Ron Killings. By the way, what happened to Truth's heel turn? Remember that? Doesn't count, I guess. And again, New Jack, Extreme Revolution, he was a heel. That doesn't count. And Shark Boy is theoretically the only babyface on the team, or the only babyface in the match, and he's on the team with a 2-on-1 advantage because Don Harris did not come out for the match. Also, and this is where I note, wasn't this supposed to be teams that are a mix of all the TNA factions? What factions are Shark Boy and Ron Killings in? Also, and as I've mentioned when I mentioned Sean Waltman and Vince Russo earlier, why do the Harrises hate the Truth? Now, if you actually know, and I think most people listening to this actually know the reason, it's because, the Harrises are racist, allegedly. And it's not allegedly that they have SS tattoos. And they're, very pro that leaning way. And they made a joke a few weeks ago when they asked about if they preferred Clay Aiken or Ruben Studdard, and they said the white guy. Whatchamacallit. So, despite the fact that it has never been established on this show that the Harris twins are racist, we're supposed to know that the Harris twins are racist, and that's why they can't team with Ron Killings. By the way, this is the same Harris twins who are in a stable with Elix Skipper. And I'm positive that if I would go back in time, I could find the Harris twins helping Elix Skipper win a match. So we can't even have them be properly racist on this show.
Oh, that gets confirmed. Spoiler alert, I watched next week's show. Locker room promo, Elix Skipper calls him out on it.
Great. So Killings valiantly fought back against two men. Don and Ron Harris both ran in and attacked all three men. Despite the fact that Ron Harris is not a participant in this match, this was not a disqualification. And despite the fact that one team actually is a pretty funny, cute little duo that we're going to discover has wacky chemistry, and the other team hates each other, the first match in this tournament to try to stifle all of the violence between the gangs ends with the team that hates each other winning. Killings pinned Shark Boy with a power slam. I wrote, here I thought the Hard 10 tournament would get old quickly. Yes, the team that fought each other the whole time was defeated the team that worked together and got along. 1.5 out of 10.
1 out of 10
Again,
for me. God.
Don Harris and Ron Killings one step closer to challenging for the World Tag Team Championship of the world. Then, remember when I said Sonny Siaki? Oh, do you have anything you want to say about the tag match?
Fuck this match.
Okay. Then, remember when I said Sonny Siaki turned the lights on in Raven's room? Apparently, he turned them back off when he left the room because Sandman and Raven now have a meeting in the darkest part of the arena that they could find. Raven said he never screwed Sandman, which is funny because you see Raven stole Sandman's wife and son. Raven drank a beer to toast his alliance with the Sandman, so Sandman clonked him with a cane. And I wrote, why did Raven leave the brightly lit part of the arena he was in and went to the shadows? Or it's possible Sonny Siaki just turned off the light.
Well, you forget Raven spit the beer in Sandman's face, and then Sandman clattered Raven with the kendo stick.
Then Kid Cash was backstage for an interview.
Oh,
now,
here we go.
Kid Cash is going to be in the Asylum Alliance Tournament. And if you've been listening to this show at all, I should not have to make you guess who Kid Cash's partner is. Because who's Kid Cash feuding with?
Trinity.
And so who is his partner?
Trinity.
Of course it is. And he was complaining about having to team with Trinity. I would be too. And then he dragged Trinity away when Goldilocks tried to ask her a question. After he left, Eric Watts walked in and told us that the most powerful Eric in wrestling history is going to be the Director of Authority. Eric implied that he and Goldie have regular sex, which she did not deny. Who was it that Goldilocks had a lesbian relationship with last year? Wasn't it Brian Lawler's girlfriend, April?
Yeah.
She gets around, apparently.
Like those 4 times in Nashville. Or Memphis, or whatever. Apparently it was because... Also, Eric Watts says that she owes him 2 favors. The first one was because he brought her shoes that she left under his bed last night. And she was blushing.
Yep. She did not deny it. And we have seen her deny many things on this show, and this was not one of them.
So
then,
here we go.
It is now time for the second match in the World Tag Team Title #1 Contenders Tournament. The Asylum Alliance Tournament, where one of these 8 teams are going to get a shot at the World Tag Team titles. And we already know one of the teams is Kid Cash and Trinity. And you may be sitting there going, well, Arya, Trinity is a woman. Why is she in this tournament? Why are you asking these questions? Because to make it fair, of course, their opponents were a mixed tag team as well. David Young, and you're like, well, David Young is in a group with Desire. What happened to that woman they had for 2 weeks that would be on the show that they insulted every week? I don't remember what happened to her, but she's in SEX. So it must be one of them, right? Nope, it's Tracy Brooks. And, of course it is.
I think she's also in this match because didn't she was the one who put the Bengay on Kid Cash's balls?
On his tights outside of his balls? Yes.
Yeah. That's probably why. Plus, it was Tracy who said, I want to get in this tournament. So
when did Tracy say this?
It was mentioned by Tenay and West during the match.
Exactly. Tenay and West told us Tracy wanted to be in this match. Tracy wanted to be in this tournament. Why didn't Tracy tell us she wanted to be in this tournament? Why didn't she walk up and grip up Bill Barron's? Wasn't she the one that gripped up Bill Barron's, or who was that gripped up Bill Barron's he put in the gauntlet match?
It was Tracy.
Okay, yeah. So she already gripped him up once to get into a match. Why did she not have to do that a second time? Or is Bill Barron's, the man who came out one week wearing a big-ass cowboy hat, declaring himself Marshall Dillon, is he afraid of Tracy Brooks and her double D breasts? Actually, I'm pretty sure they're only single D at this point, because I'm fairly certain they get bigger than this.
They do get bigger.
And anyway, Don West says that if these teams want the tag team title match, they have to team up together. Why would any of these teams want to wrestle for the tag team titles together? They either are completely indifferent to one another, which is the best we've gotten so far, or they hate each other.
Now you're just underselling New Jack and Shark Boy's chemistry again.
But that we don't, for all we know right now, New Jack and Shark Boy were a 1-week team that we're never going to see again. They were 5 minutes of TV that was cute, and we may never see them again, to the best of our knowledge, because that's all we know on this show. Then, because TNA, on a show where the main event of this show that you paid for is Sonny Siaki versus the Sandman, Mike Tenay plugs that you could go watch a different company's pay-per-view and watch Jeff Jarrett versus Sting in a title versus title match. Yes, a match that is much more interesting than the main event that we paid to watch on this show. We are plugging for another company.
You also get a match of the year contender on that pay-per-view.
Which I guarantee nobody knows about, because I have no idea what match you could possibly be talking about. Those Andrew McManus shows are almost as good sometimes as these TNA shows.
Four-way dance, international title, Sabin, Lynn, Swinger, and somebody else.
Okay. I'm going to bet even if Jerry Lynn had both of his legs chopped off, that was still a hell of a match. I can't speak for its match of the year tendencies, but I'm going to bet even with no legs, Jerry Lynn could have pulled out a hell of a match there.
Oh, you're in good hands with Frankie Kazarian.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
match of the year candidate.
Yeah. By the way, we had probably the best match of Tracy Brooks' career and probably Trinity's career, because this was essentially a match between Kid Cash and David Young. Occasionally Tracy got involved, occasionally Trinity got involved, and the finish saw Cash go for the moneymaker, but the lights dimmed, and we get a video where the masked luchador who borrowed Ole Anderson's Black Scorpion voice box promised to reveal itself next week. By the way, remember when this whole story started? Because there was a mysterious masked luchador interfering in Jerry Lynn and Conan segments.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the follow-up to all that. I'm going to bet Jerry Lynn and Conan have absolutely nothing to do with whatever this reveal is next week. And then Young and Tracy won when David laid out Kid Cash with a spine buster. So at the very least, we did not get the team who hate each other wins. And as always, it is weird to see David Young win matches. But again, the whole point of this was, well, it's a mixed tag because we want to put a woman on each side. Spoiler alert, David Young and Tracy will not be wrestling a man and a woman in the next round. I don't know who the hell they're wrestling. It may be who'chamacallit, Ron Killings and Don Harris. But it won't be a man and a woman in the next round. That we know. Anyway, thanks to this match essentially being David Young versus Kid Cash, I give this match a 4.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 4 out of 10. I thought it was fine, I guess. Neither element of it got out of first gear. Except for when Trinity fought David Young, where it looked like a competitive match.
Blame that on David Young. Then,
or actually being a decent journeyman, I guess.
And putting her over, yes. Then, because again, like I mentioned, the real stars are in the other company, we get an interview with AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown, where D'Lo Brown has to talk about WWE, and he has to talk about how WWE scripts promos. You know, if wrestling is real, what the hell is a scripted promo?
No idea.
You know, in UFC, does Dana White go up to Conor McGregor and say, here's your script for your promo for your next fight? No, he just gives Conor McGregor a microphone and says, talk. And by the way, it shows you how little I know about UFC that I don't even know if Conor McGregor is still fighting. But that's the first person that came to mind. At least I didn't say Chael. So D'Lo Brown is in a match where he's teaming with AJ Styles versus America's Most Wanted, and his promo is about WWE and Jeff Jarrett. Makes total sense. And then we go to the ring where Raven has come back out and has ordered Jeff Jarrett to come to the ring. And because Jeff Jarrett did not come out in approximately 2.7 seconds, Raven gave Borash a DDT. Because why not?
Well, he did say he was going to go after innocent victims until he gets what he wants.
Well,
So makes
yeah,
sense.
that goes out pretty damn quickly since he never gets what he wants or doesn't for 2 years. And by the way, Mike Tenay and Don West were so concerned with Jeremy Borash that all they could pretty much say was send out Mortimer Plumtree to do the ring announcing. So thanks, JB. By the way, JB is in America and he's going to be in Australia on that WWA show. So hey, if Borash could do it, where the hell's everybody else? We then get
You know,
we
because
then
he's
get the
not on.
match.
Here's the thing: he's not on the tour.
Borash
He
is like
no, he's on the pay per view. He's doing commentary for the pay per view, but he's not doing the live tour that they're doing.
either fucking way. Like I think the fans in Australia could have survived if I would have gotten some Jerry Lynn on this show, and you know, although who knows, they would probably would have fucking Jerry Lynn, teaming with fucking I don't fucking know who the hell he could have teamed with. He would have teamed with Mike Awesome and taken on, fucking Ron Harris and fucking April. They could have brought April back, team with Ron Harris. Um, Anyway, we then get the match that if a competent booker was booking this company, would be the finals of a tag team tournament to determine the number one contenders. But instead, it is the qualifying match because these two teams are not as good as Don Harris and Ron Killings or David Young and Tracy Brooks. It was America's Most Wanted versus AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown. And Mortimer Plumtree showed why Jeremy Borash doesn't have to worry about losing his job until WWE fires Christy Hemme in a few years. Um,
No, it's when they hired Penzer.
at some point, Christy Hemme replaces him. But uh, let's see here. AJ and AMW show shades of the awesome chemistry they develop years later when they do the team or they do the feud with Styles and Daniels. Harrison Storm played subtle heel, getting the heat on AJ, who apparently has turned babyface at some point. Likewise, D'Lo, who remember turned heel that one week. D'Lo has also turned babyface, which we keep kind of acknowledging. And let's see here. They fuck up something royally. AJ goes for his backflip into inverted DDT, but he did not jump off the ropes high enough, and it somehow turned into a Chris Harris spear that they were able to play off. The finish then saw David Young, Sonny Siaki, and Triple X all hit the ring to try to cause a double disqualification, but it was all for naught as Storm rolled up D'Lo for the pin. And again, this could have been a really good final match, but we can't have anyone care about this stupid tournament. And spoiler alert, I know who wins this tournament, and it does not make me any less angry at this stupid tournament. America's Most Wanted wins 7.0 out of 10.
You are really generous with this match. I gave it a 5. Just
It's the only good,
I
it's the
couldn't
only
enjoy
good
this
thing in the
match.
entire second hour of the fucking show.
No, there was something enjoyable near the end.
I'm afraid to ask what the hell you're referring to,
You'll
but we're
see.
almost at the end. What the hell was next? Okay.
Oh, the
Main
Gilberti
event.
video.
Yeah, we had a video of main event Glenn Gilberti, cutting a promo, and he wants to win the world title and turn the show into SEX TNA because that's what people watch wrestling for. Anything to say about our number one contender, our
Uh,
world title challenger?
I finished 1 point short of advancing to the next rank in Balatro, so I was kind of angry about that.
So Don West plugs that June 18th is the 1 year anniversary show. And then they had no matches planned for next week. And all they said was we were going to have more tournament matches. Don then flat out said he had no idea who would even be in it. And then we were told that a very opinionated segment called TNA Talk is coming soon. What is the difference between that, any of the random interviews we see, the sit-down promos that TNA has with people, or the interrogator segment? What is the difference between this segment and those segments? I guess because those are going to be real.
Well,
You know?
Don West also brings up Key Cash is wrestling the Luchador.
But is he wrestling the Luchador, or are they just saying
Yeah.
that the Luchador is going to reveal themselves?
They're having a match.
I don't think he said that.
He did.
That may be what happened, but I'm pretty sure he did not actually say that.
So they'll have the 2 last Anarchy Alliance matches, is what he said for that.
I can't even care anymore. And we've got weeks of that to come. We then get our main event. It is Sonny Siaki versus the Sandman in a Ravens Clockwork Orange House of Fun match with Raven as the referee, and he's referred to as the promoter of violence. And we had 2 gaffes that happened during his intro, where first Mortimer Plumtree called him the Minister of Violence, which is a much cooler name, but nope, he is only the promoter of violence. And also the graphics person put up a graphic calling him Sonny Siaki.
That's not my name.
Whatever.
They call me Stacy. That's not my name. That's not my name.
Mike Tenay wondered out loud why Raven seemed to always be a part of the Ravens Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. I don't know. I can't imagine why Raven would be part of that match. So apparently, Sandman was told when walking out that there was still 20 minutes of TV time left, and he's like, fuck that shit. And it took him approximately 6 minutes to walk to the ring. And again, this is the Asylum. This is the Nashville Fairgrounds Arena. It takes skill to take more than 30 seconds to walk to the ring.
Free beer for everyone.
Sandman took 6 minutes. Honestly, remember when Bobby Roode was in NXT and it would take him the whole length of the Glorious theme song to walk to the ring? That took slightly more skill because Roode wouldn't walk around the building. He would just walk really slowly. But yeah, Sandman took laps around the arena like he's Brock Lesnar doing a 5-minute pay-per-view match. The most interesting part of this match, of the main event of the show, which I'm sure is where all the drama came in, according to Jerry Jarrett, was Raven just sat in the corner. The referee of the match just sat in the corner, which means basically no near falls. Sonny Siaki did what became the Petey Williams "Oh Canada" spot when he hung up Sandman in the Tree of Woe and stood on his balls. Siaki and Sandman both had the match won, but Raven did not make the count, so the match continued. The finish of the match, because we cannot have a winner in this match. In the main event of the pay-per-view, we cannot have a winner. So the finish of the match saw Raven stand up, give both men an even flow DDT, and prove that he is not part of either group. Although I'm going to bet somehow next week there's still debate over who Raven is in a group with. And by the way, the only difference between this match and the last hardcore match we had on this show was that this match, they weren't counting points during it. So no winner, 1.5 out of 10.
No score. It was more of a segment than a match.
Bell rang, and then the bell rang. That counts as a match. I think Trey and
1 out of 10.
Trey and I had that argument with the Moondogs match where they got disqualified in 2 seconds on Smoky Mountain. The bell rang, then the bell rang. That counts as a match. The show ended with Raven storming out into the parking lot to yell out for Jeff Jarrett. Keep in mind, we have seen Jeff Jarrett's dressing room 85 times in this company's history. We know it's not in the parking lot, but he goes to the parking lot because, of course, he does. And out comes Amazing Red, who's now wearing a Ribera Steakhouse jacket for some reason. He beats Raven's ass into the ring. Red is about to give Raven some move, but Julio and Alexis run down. Red overcome the two of them. He then sets up a table, puts Raven on it, and does a swanton bomb. However, Red weighs about 140 pounds, and he bounced off Raven and did not break the table. But thankfully, they did it a second time, and he actually went through the damn table. All I can say about this is at least the fans were more into this than anything else in the show, proving yet again that if they actually tried to push Red, like give him a real fucking push for once, they might have something. But whatever stick they have up their ass about not really pushing Red or doing this half-assed push they're doing for him, leads to shit like we see on this show and pretty much every fucking week with Red.
I think it's more along the line because doesn't he also do a lot of Ring of Honor?
But half the fucking roster does Ring of Honor. Raven does Ring of Honor. I don't know if he's doing it right now, but I know he does do Ring of Honor. I know, like, AJ, Daniels, Skipper, Lynn, basically take the entire X division. They're pretty much doing Ring of Honor. So, and, and why would it even matter if they're doing Ring of Honor? TNA runs one show a week. It's Wednesday nights, and Ring of Honor does all their shows on Saturdays or Fridays or Sundays. And we're still 10 months away from Rob Feinstein LOLing, I'll pretend you said 18.
Plus, we also heard that. Plus, wasn't also kind of common knowledge around this time that Feinstein was really into Amazing Red, so he got the push there, and TNA didn't like it. And plus, he was also getting Japan bookings at the time, so they were like,
It doesn't matter. Then don't book him or don't book him to win matches and then immediately get laid out. It's like it ain't that fucking hard, guys. To quote Kevin Sullivan. Hell, I never played this on this show. Let me pull up the fucking audio clip of Kevin Sullivan.
It ain't that fucking hard, guys. We ain't building a rocket. We're getting guys over in a fake fucking business.
There you go.
That is a great quote.
Yeah. But apparently, some people need to make it way more complicated than it ever has to be. And that's where we are. And so that brings us to the end of the fucking show. And we almost went as long as the damn show. But overall match quality, 4.0 out of 10. And then this might be because I'm drunk or high or because I watched this show in shifts because I fell asleep halfway through it when I tried watching it yesterday. Overall enjoyment, I gave it a 5.0 out of 10 because I did not, despite all this ranting you just heard me do for the last 89 minutes, I did not hate this show as much as I thought I would. Although there was a lot of bad shit on this show.
Yeah, it was oddly enough an easier watch than most of the shows that we've done because a lot of the stuff wasn't offensively bad. It was just stupid bad.
We didn't have 15 Glenn Gilberti segments. We didn't have, just like the overkill of the heresies that we've had in recent weeks. Basically, all that shit from last week, ignore that ever happened. In case anybody cares. However, future build, 1.0 out of 10. We are still building to Disco Inferno getting a world title match in 2 weeks, and we managed to book a tag team tournament where one of the best teams in the company aren't even a part of it. However, Tracy Brooks and Trinity are, giving us a final overall rating of a 3.33. I'm going to bet when we get to September 8th, 2004, and we go to like what the overall average of 111 shows is, I'm going to bet it's going to be in the low threes.
Also, it'll be in the low fours.
God.
Because
So
here's what I'll say about TNA. They don't they start to get firing on all cylinders and start trying when they hit May of 2004 and they get on Fox Sportsnet and do Impact. Because now it looks like a real wrestling company.
Yeah. And I'm so over this show. We're not even halfway through. Oh well. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this week's show. You want to plug anything before we finish up?
Play Brotato, your life will be changed.
There we go. Well, thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Singular Wireless sucked.